The Lost Ones, Part 1. I strolled out into the field to wander in my thoughts. Gazing into the fog, I felt marooned on an island of sight where I could see where my feet met the grass and the fog covered the horizon. The air was cold and damp, and it left my fingers, nose and ears wet and slightly numb. I travelled for some time, thinking about the ocean and the warm sand surrounding my feet. My thoughts were interrupted by the squeal of an antelope, then the impact of the large animal hitting the ground. I was struck with fear by the sight of the mysterious, dark figure, larger than any man I've ever seen. Its eyes glowed a piercing red. I felt a deep abyss of haunting terror. I wanted to run, but I knew I wasn't going to make it. Entry 6. This was one of the entries Jackie had come across when she found herself on the island. The handwriting and the name on the cover were familiar to her. It was a topic near and dear to her after all. Why wouldn't a wife investigate the disappearance of her beloved husband? That, after all, is what got her into this mess. Where she was at the moment. Being chased by something. Her husband, Julian, worked for some secret company. They investigated strange things and dealt with stuff not meant for the public eye. Julian, a former detective until a bad case made him quit the force, was a good fit with them. It meant that he was home a lot more, and he assured her that he wasn't in any danger. But he couldn't really tell her about his work. It did put a strain on their marriage, having a portion of his life that she was locked out of, but she loved him, and that was enough for her. Then, one day, he went missing. One day he went to work and never returned home. At first, she thought he was on an extended assignment, but as days turned into weeks, she became more and more worried. Calling his office, she was given the generic answer of his being on assignment and that he couldn't be reached. The person on the other end of the line told her that they had people looking into it. They told her to sit tight and wait for news. That wasn't good enough for Jackie. That was nowhere near acceptable. She wasn't going to wait, especially as she had a feeling that Julian was in danger. Even if she didn't know his job, Jackie knew her husband. She'd known him for almost 20 years now. She knew that Julian had a bad habit of bringing his work home with him. His superiors at the station often got on him about that. Jackie did as well. She didn't want to stumble across case files and get nightmares. So they had a filing cabinet installed, bolted to the floor and safely locked, just for his work files. He wasn't supposed to bring anything home from his new job, but, again, Jackie knew her husband. It was simple to head into his office and crack open the cabinet with the key Julian didn't know she had. And there they were. A bunch of files, and none of them old. She extracted the latest one and opened it up. It looked like he was investigating a missing persons case. Well, multiple missing people who had all gone missing from an island just off the coast of Spain. Jackie packed the file and some emergency supplies, including Julian's spare revolver. She booked a flight and was on her way. 2 flights later, and an interesting misunderstanding with her taxi driver, and she arrived in a small port town in Spain. She was even able to gain access to Julian's room at the inn he was staying at. The family that owned and managed the inn mentioned that they hadn't seen her husband for over a week now. Yes, his room was booked for the next month. Yes, she could certainly stay in his room and wait for him to return. The room itself was a mess, but Julian himself was usually a mess when he was on a case. Files and worn clothes just scattered around the room. Before she knew it, Jackie found herself cleaning up the room out of sheer habit. She could even mentally place Julian in the room, figuring out what he was doing. That was when she came across his binder. He used it as a journal, adding more paper as needed and discarding whatever wasn't. Inside was just one entry. I arrived here safely in this small town. The agency has tasked me with finding out what's happened in this town and to find out answers. So far, 5 people have gone missing, with no trace of where they went. The people here are nice. I found a lovely inn overlooking the ocean. I should bring Jackie back here once this is all over. Our anniversary is soon. Jackie's going to be upset if this takes too long. I know she worries, but people are in real trouble. But the answer's out there, and I'll find it. And those missing people. That is, after all, why I joined. to know the truth. Entry 1. It was dated 2 weeks ago, probably the night he arrived. Jackie packed the binder away and finished tidying up the room. She wasn't able to find any more notes by the time she was done. She took the moment to unpack the stuff she wasn't going to carry with her: extra clothing, toiletries, and miscellaneous things. She did bring her cell and her backpack. Inside was the file she'd brought from Julian's cabinet, his binder full of missing notes, and a few survival essentials like a knife, flashlight, and rope. Attached to a shoulder holster was Julian's spare gun. She loaded up a pair of speed loaders with extra cartridges and put them in a fanny pack that was concealed under her shirt. Going back to the small reception, she asked the person on duty if Julian had asked about any addresses. They thought about it and recalled that he had asked about the local library. That was something, so Jackie asked for the address and, armed with a slip of paper, she was on her way. The library she arrived at was small, with not a lot of shelves. It matched the small town quite well. Talking to the librarian, an elderly gentleman with a lot of laugh lines, she introduced herself and brought up Julian. She was wondering what he was doing in the library. Her question earned a curious look from the elderly man, but then his eyes sparkled as he remembered something. He went into the back room and brought out a small leather-bound book. He mentioned that Julian was looking into local legends and had been recommended this book. He handed her the book and directed her to a section of the library with tables and chairs for her to read it. She thanked him and proceeded to the area he'd indicated. Opening the book, she chuckled when a piece of paper fell out from between the pages. Was able to find this library after asking around town. Standard operating procedure is to avoid asking the families of the missing person, unless we have to. Odd thing is, the people in this town are pretty upbeat. The town is small enough that most people know each other, and with how everyone seems to know my name, news must travel pretty fast. So why is no one talking about the 5 missing college students? Is it because they were tourists and therefore outsiders? But listening to the local gossip while visiting restaurants and cafes, there hasn't been a single mention. It's very odd, and my instincts are telling me that this isn't a simple matter. Something big is involved. Not like the creatures I usually have to investigate. Coming to the library was the next step. I'm here looking into local legends, and in this book I may have found a lead. There's a fable about something called the Lost Ones. I'll do more research and figure out my next step. Entry 2. Jackie slipped the note into Julian's binder. From there, she took a look at the book's index and found the section referring to the Lost Ones. From the book, Jackie learned that the Lost Ones were a group of giant creatures, the smallest of which could top 8 feet. They seemed to occupy the nearby island and hunt the local animals. This included any human who found their way there. They would trap the souls on the island by producing a never-ending fog that would daze the senses and keep people from leaving until they're able to hunt them down. But they took their time, aided by the fact that time moved at a different rate within the fog. What could be minutes inside would be days outside. Seeing this, Jackie figured that Julian had come to the same conclusion that she had. Those college kids had wandered onto the islands and become trapped by a lost one. Her lovable idiot of a husband most likely went after them and got trapped himself. Well, there was only one thing that Jackie could do. She collected the book and went back to the counter, where the librarian was reading his own book. She got his attention and asked 2 questions. If she could check out this book, and if he knew where she could hire a boat. End Part 1.